Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out InvestFourMore.com. Hi everyone, Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. Welcome to another episode of the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. Today it is just me. I'm going to be discussing financing for rental properties and fix and flips. So, going to have a very full pack show, lots of information, lots of different things to discuss. The reason I want to talk about financing is because I see it over and over again where people want to use all cash for everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. A very safe way to invest. I'm not saying you shouldn't use all cash when you invest, but I just want to point out a few factors, a few different things, a few advantages of using financing. You don't have to use a 100% financing. You don't have to borrow every single penny, but there are definitely some advantages to using some financing. It can be very cheap if done the right way, and it can increase your returns greatly if done the right way as well. So I think a lot of people just assume because you're paying cash or because all your properties are paid off, you're making more money. And the fact is you might be making more money on one particular property, but what could you be doing with that money that you finance? Where could you invest that money? Could you be making even more money if you had that money spread out into more properties, not just one? That's what I'd love to discuss. Looking forward to a great show. Before I get started, just like to thank all the listeners. We've had some great results and feedback on the podcast. And the readers on the site, we're still doing very well. Did my first webinar last week, and it was a great success. So happy to do that. Be on the lookout for some more webinars we're going to have. Those are a lot of fun. And yeah, let's get going here. So the first thing I really want to talk about is financing rental properties. So we've talked about kind of the basics of rentals, good investments, some key points. I really want to dive deep into why financing is such a huge advantage when you buy rentals. So we'll use real basic, easy examples of $100,000 purchase prices, maybe properties that rent for $1,200, $1,300 in that range. In some markets, I know those don't exist, but you can get those deals in some areas. Hard to find, but like I always say, if real estate investing was easy, if it was easy to make a lot of money in it, everybody would do it, and there wouldn't be so much profit for those of us who do it. So if you buy your rental property for all cash, you're going to cash flow. It's going to be basically impossible not to cash flow because you won't have a mortgage payment. You'll just be paying taxes, insurance, have maintenance costs, and some vacancies, of course, when the house isn't rented. But your rent coming in is going to be much, much higher than those expenses. So even if you have a few vacant months, a few maintenance costs here and there, you're likely going to cash flow and have pretty good cash flow. But what you really have to consider when you're paying cash or you have rentals paid off is what is the opportunity cost of having all your money tied up into that one property. So you may be cash flowing $800 a month, and that's making you a good chunk of money every single year. But you've got $100,000 tied up in one property to make that $800 a year, which, it's not a bad return. You're around 10% in that range, which is pretty good. It's better than most investments out there. But if you could finance that property, you don't even have to do 80% loan. You could do a 70% loan, take $70,000, and you could most likely buy 2 more properties with that $70,000. Maybe even 3, depending on the condition, what price range you're in, but we'll say 2 to be conservative. Take that $70,000, buy 2 more properties, And, obviously your cash flow is going to go down on the first property because instead of having no loan, no mortgage payment, you're going to have a $70,000 loan now. Your mortgage payment will be pretty low at $70,000 depending on what type of loan you get, but probably in the $400 range, right around there. So your cash flow goes from $800 a month to $400 a month. You just lost half your cash flow. Seems like a pretty big hit, but you're still making money. You're still making $4,800 a year, and that's not too bad when you consider you've got $30,000 of your cash tied up into the property instead of $100,000 tied up in the property. So your returns, even though your cash flow has just dropped from $800 to $400 a month, your returns on the cash invested has actually increased from around 10% closer to 15% or more. So you're making more on the money you have invested. Plus, you can take that $70,000, buy 2 more properties. Maybe they'll each cash flow $400 a month. And all of a sudden, that same $100,000 that you had tied up into one property, making you $800 a month, now is in 3 different properties, and it's making you $1,200 a month. So that really shows you can make more money by buying more properties with the same amount of cash. And that just illustrates the one advantage of rental properties, and that is cash flow with 3 different properties. Something else to consider, if you've got one rental property that's a little bit risky. For one thing, if it goes vacant, if you need repairs, and you've got one rental, you've got no income coming in. While it's vacant, you have no rent coming in because you just have one rental property. If it needs repairs, you've got just that one rental check coming in to help cover repairs and different things that pop up. But if you have 3 rental properties, it's kind of like diversifying your investment. So if you've got 3 rentals and one goes vacant, then you're still getting cash flow from the other 2 rental properties. They can help cover the vacancies, the different maintenance costs, because not all of them are going to be vacant at the same time. Not all of them are going to have maintenance issues at the same time. And that helps diversify your investment and your returns. If something happens in a neighborhood, or you never know. I mean, it's very rare, but one neighborhood could drop in value greatly while another one does not. If you have one rental that happens to be in that neighborhood, you're out of luck. That's not a good situation to be in. But if you have 3 rental properties that are spread out a little bit, that again diversifies your investment, a little safer than having all your money tied up into one property. And something else to consider, which many people fail to realize when they pay all cash for properties, is some unscrupulous tenants. There's always going to be some bad people out there. They may look for opportunities to exploit people, to exploit landlords. Maybe they get hurt in the house, something happens, and all of a sudden they file a lawsuit against the landlord for not taking care of the property or causing them to get hurt. Something happens like that. Well, are they going to look for a property that has a loan against it and $30,000 of equity? Or are they going to look for a property that has no loan against it and $100,000 of equity? They're going to look for the property with the most equity, no loan against it, and they're going to see dollar signs thinking, oh, look at all this money this landlord has because he's got no loan. He's got to be loaded. That's the house we're going to go after, try and sue him, get some money. Now, it's also important to know, even if you have a $70,000 loan and you pay it off down to $10,000 over years and years and years, no one can tell what you owe against that loan. They can just tell you have a loan against the property. So you may have taken out a $70,000 loan 15 years ago. Now there's only $10,000 left on that loan. To anybody looking at public records or what they can see with public information, still looks like you have a $70,000 loan. Now, common sense says, if it's a 15-year-old loan, it's going to be paid down some, and you're not going to owe $70,000 on it, but it's still going to show that loan on there. Where if you have no loan, property's completely paid off, it's going to say no loan, free and clear, and that's really where people are going to target. Now, I'm not saying it happens all the time. It's not an extremely common practice, but it is something to consider when you have properties that are all paid off, no loans against them. All right, so now it's not just the cash flow that really is increased without having a loan on a property. With one property, now, I don't like to invest for appreciation. Anybody who's listened to me or read any of my articles will know I'm not huge on buying for appreciation. I like to buy for cash flow and hope it appreciates. Love it when it does appreciate, but I don't invest for appreciation. But houses do appreciate on occasion. In Colorado, extremely hot market right now. My properties have gone up in value significantly in the last couple of years. And if I had one property, there's some properties I bought for $100,000, put maybe $15,000 of work into them a couple of years ago. Those houses are worth $180,000, some of them close to $200,000 right now. Well, if I bought one property, then I just saw an increase in equity of, $80,000, $85,000. Awesome. I love it. But with financing, I was able to buy 3 properties instead of just one. All of a sudden, that $80,000 increase has turned into a $200,000 increase, $240,000 increase spread over multiple properties. So that's really where you see huge advantages as well with appreciation. Now it can happen the other way too. Properties can go down in value, which if you have one, it'll be less than if you have 3. But again, when you're investing for cash flow, when you're investing to get that money in coming every month, you can ride out when prices drop. You can keep making money, wait till prices go up again if you need to sell some properties. You don't have to sell them when prices go down. When prices do go up like that and you have multiple properties, you don't have to sell them to see that return either. I've refinanced multiple properties, used that money from refinances to buy more rental properties. Just kind of keep snowballing and snowballing. I always make sure I still have plenty of cash flow after I do a refinance, but I'm able to take out $30,000, $40,000 on some properties, which is enough for at least one property, sometimes 1.5 properties. And I can increase my return so much more by buying more properties, just getting those great deals. The financing really helps me, supercharge my investing. Now, besides appreciation, there's always buying below market value. So when I paid $100,000 for those houses that needed $15,000 in work, and they went up to value into $200,000, that $80,000 was not all appreciation. So maybe I was being a little, say $50,000 of that was appreciation. The rest was buying below market value. So after I bought those houses, I pay $100,000, put $15,000 of work into them. They all were probably worth $150,000 at least. That's kind of the ratio I looked for. I have $100,000 plus $15,000 repairs. I've got $115,000 into them. I want them to be worth at least 20% more than that after I'm done making repairs, if not more. So if you buy one property with cash, then hey, that's great. You just, bought below market value. Maybe you gain $20,000 in equity. Awesome. That's pretty cool. I love getting instant equity. But if you're able to buy 3 properties using financing, again, all of a sudden that $20,000 increase in equity is $60,000 increase in equity over those 3 properties. So that really can make a huge difference in your net worth. Again, refinancing, taking some of that money out later on is also an option. Even if prices don't go up, when you buy below market value, increase the value with, making repairs, you still have equity and can use that equity to buy more properties. But we're not done. Another awesome advantage with rental properties are taxes. We've talked about this too, but you can depreciate rental properties over time. You can depreciate the structure. So that $100,000 property we bought, maybe we say the structure is worth $90,000. Well, we can depreciate that over, 27 and a half years? And I always get it mixed up, either 26 and a half or 27 and a half years, but I'm not a detail-oriented person. I like the big picture. So, but you can depreciate it over one of those time frames, and that can be add up very quickly. So usually it's a couple $1,000s a year, even on these low-end properties that you can deduct from your taxes, from your income, which usually saves you, about $1,000 a year in actual taxes you're paying, depending on what tax bracket you're in. If you're in the higher or lower tax bracket, that will change. So if you buy one rental property with cash, then you get that $1,000 tax savings a year or whatever it may be. You buy 3 rental properties with financing. Again, now you're saving $3,000 a year on your taxes. So it's huge advantage to buy more properties over just buying one. And the question comes into play as well. Well, actually, before I get to that, there's one more thing, and that's equity pay down. So with cash, you're making $800 a month cash flow, we'll say, on that property paying cash. You're making $400 a month, maybe if you've got your loan on it. Well, you're making that $400 a month that comes into your pocket, but you're also paying the loan down. So now it's not money you see in your pocket. It's not money you actually, will realize unless you sell or refinance the property. But that's still a loan you're paying off on the property over time. And you may be paying off $100 a month, maybe $90 a month, depending on the loan amount. That's another $1,000 a year that's coming into your pocket by financing those properties. If you've got 3 properties, there's $3,000 a year that you're paying off on your loans versus the cash one where you're simply not paying off anything, So once you add up all the benefits of financing rental properties, I think it's really a no-brainer for me. Now, everyone's got their own personal goals and levels of what they can handle as far as stress and money and risk. For me, it just makes sense to finance my properties because the returns are so great. For other people, they say, hey, I don't feel safe financing it. I don't want debt. I don't like debt. I have to pay cash. So I understand that. People have different comfort levels. But let's look at the risk of financing. If it is a lot riskier to finance properties than to pay all cash for a property. So let's say we've got these $70,000 financed versus all cash property, and prices go down. So if you've got 3 properties and prices drop 20%, say they go from, the thing that you have to think about here is how are you buying the properties? Are you paying full retail value and paying cash versus getting a loan? Because if you're doing that, then yes, there is a huge amount of risk. We'll say these properties are worth $100,000. You're paying $100,000 for them full retail value. So the cash property has $100,000 equity. The finance properties have $30,000 in equity. If prices drop 20%, then the cash property is down to $80,000 equity, and the finance properties all go down to being worth $80,000. But you had 3 properties which each lost $20,000. So you lost $60,000 of your investment instead of just losing $20,000 of your investment with a cash purchase. So in that case, when you're paying full retail, yes, it definitely is more risky if prices go down. Again, you don't have to sell your properties when prices go down. If you have enough cash flow and are doing things right, you should be able to ride out those storms, wait for the market to increase. However, if you buy the properties below market value, like I do, all of a sudden it doesn't become quite as risky. So that house that you pay $100,000 for, you put, say, $15,000 of work into it, you got $115,000 cash into it, and say it's worth $150,000 now. Prices drop 20%, which is $30,000. So you're now worth $120,000 on your property. You put $115,000 into it, so you're still ahead of the game. Yeah, you lost some values, you lost some equity, but you're still $5,000 ahead of your full investment. Either those 3 properties, you end up putting $30,000 down plus $15,000 repair on each property. Then you still have 3 properties worth $150,000 after repairs buying below market value, and say all 3 of those properties drop in value. Yes, you lost $90,000 in equity on 3 properties instead of losing just $30,000 in equity on 1 property. However, the money you had into those properties, your break-even point was still $115,000. So your properties are still worth $120,000. So you're still ahead of the game than buying in cash because you still have 3 properties with $5,000 in equity instead of just 1 property with $5,000 in equity. Now, if prices keep dropping, they drop 50%, then you would start losing more money having more finance properties. But again, you have to look at it. How much below market are you buying them? Are you going to have to sell if the market decreases? If you have enough cash flow, you shouldn't have to sell. If you have enough reserves, if you're in a stable financial position, you should not have to sell the houses when prices go down. The people who get in trouble when prices go down are usually over leveraged. They're financed to the tilt, maxed out. They don't have cash flow. Their rent barely covers their payments, does not cover vacancies or maintenance. So they're not making any money anyway, and they have no equity in their homes. Those are the investors who got wiped out during the housing crisis. They weren't investing for cash flow. They weren't investing on fundamentals. They were investing hoping the market would just keep going up and up and up, and they could sell out in a couple of years and make 40, 50 grand on each property. So look at the way you invest. Leverage does not have to be scary. Leverage does not have to be risky if you do it the right way and invest the right way. All right, so, it's not just rental properties that have huge advantages from leverage. I do fix and flips as well. I've got 9 fix and flips. I've got a couple more coming into the system as well. If you read one of my articles last week on InvestFourMore, I am in the process of buying a $500,000 fix and flip. That is very scary. I will tell you that right now, but there's huge profit potential there. And that's the reason I'm doing it. There has to be so much profit and room to make money on those big flips because the costs are so much more. And that's why I rarely, if ever, do them, just because you don't see properties cheap enough in the high end to give you enough profit room percentage-wise to be safe on those high-end flips. But financing fix and flips, again, is a huge advantage if you want to make a business out of it, not just a hobby once a year fix and flip person, but if you really want to make a business of it, fix and flip properties for long term, make a lot of money from it. We'll go through the same examples. Say you buy a fix and flip for $100,000, it's going to be worth $170,000 when you're done. It takes $20,000 in repairs. If you're paying all cash for that property, you're going to have a lot of cash needed to buy that. You will need $100,000 to buy it. You'll need the $20,000 in repairs. You'll need carrying costs for insurance, property taxes, utilities, all kinds of different things. There's an HOA, probably looking at $125,000, $130,000 in cash you'll need for this entire flip. Now, how long does it take to flip? A lot of people say, a couple months you can flip it. Realistically, it takes 6 months to flip a house, especially if you're a beginner. Getting all the repairs done, getting the house marketed, getting it sold. That $130,000 cash is tied up that whole time. You can't use it for other flips. It's in that property. It's being used. So some people say, yeah, but man, I saved so much money on financing costs because I'm using cash to do this flip. I don't have to pay a hard money lender. I don't have to pay a bank. I don't have to pay a private money lender. But again, you have to look at your opportunity cost. Having all your money tied up into that one property, what are you missing out on? We'll make it easy. Say you're paying 10% interest on the money if you were to finance it. So you've got $125,000 cash in this one property. Say you've got an opportunity to put 20% down instead on a couple of flips. So you've got $100,000. You have to put $20,000 into it for your down payment, another $20,000 into it for repairs, another $5,000, $10,000 for the other costs. So instead of having $130,000 into this property, you've got $50,000 into it in cash, but you've got $80,000 of it financed at 10%. Those simple numbers: $8,000 a year, $4,000 in interest costs over 6 months. That's what that $8,000 loan will cost you. You might have a couple points to pay in the beginning. Say, even if you're paying 4 points on $80,000, $3,200. So your financing costs be about we'll say $8,000 just to max them out. Say, hey, it cost me $8,000 to get this loan for 6 months on this flip. $8,000. A lot of people say, wow, that's a huge chunk of money. That if my profit's $32,000, now it's $22,000. I would much rather have a $30,000 profit paying cash than a $22,000 profit with that loan. But what if you could do 2 flips at the same time? You're putting $50,000 into this flip of your own money, which is a lot of money. You can find financing where you're putting less money into it, using hard money, using different options. So all of a sudden you've got 2 flips and you've got $50,000 into each of them using this $80,000 loan. And you still have $25,000, $30,000 less cash into both deals than you did with the one deal. Now, yes, you are having to pay $8,000 in financing costs on both loans at $16,000, which cuts into your profit. But look, you're still making $22,000 on each deal, which is $44,000 total, compared to making $30,000 in profit on one deal. So by using financing, you've increased your profit by 50% almost, around there. You've got $25,000 less of your own cash into the deal, and you are actually in a less risky position because you have a loan against it, some leverage, less of your own money tied up. That sounds like a win-win situation to me. And we're talking about a pretty high interest, pretty high cost loan. When I use my bank financing, my portfolio lender financing, I'm getting a 75% loan to value ratio at 5.25% interest rate and 1 origination point. So my costs are about half of what we just discussed, actually much less than that. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Then I can also use private money to help me with down payments, with repairs. That's how I'm able to have 9 flips at once, because I have this money, because I'm using leverage, and because the financing helps me make much, much more money. If I was not using any financing, if I was using all cash, I might be able to do 3 flips, depending on the price point. So I would have the potential for, average about $30,000 in profit on each flip. I'd be looking about $90,000, $80,000 in profit versus, 30,000 times 9. Much, much different situation, much different business when you're using financing. It really allows you to level up, to just go after more properties and just increase your business in huge ways. Another thing to consider, just like the rental properties, the more flips you have going at once, it does diversify your risk. Some flips we have lost money on once in a while. It's pretty rare. But if you got all your money tied up into one flip and you lose money on that flip, that really sucks. There's a lot of work that goes into flipping, takes a lot of time, and it really does not feel good when you lose money and you've only got one going and it took you 6 months to do it and you spend all that time on it. But if you've got 3 different flips going and one loses money, if you know what you're doing, the other 2 are probably going to make money. They're probably going to make up for that one that lost money, and you're still going to be okay. You're still going to have a profit even though one of them lost money. All right, so that is all I've got for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Just kind of trying to give you a real high-level idea of why financing can be so valuable when you're doing flips, when you're investing in real estate. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, check out the site, InvestFourMore.com. Always welcome to email me if you have some questions, mark@investformore.com. And thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.